Hi, my name is Nikki, and this is Three Steps to Gardening Year Round, a video accompanying a blog on permaculturegardens.org. So, while it is certainly challenging to grow in the winter, it is not outright impossible to do so. And we've learned this ourselves. This is my husband Dave showing off a seed starting tray of germinated salad mash that germinated underneath these hoops. Now, these low tunnels were, of course, shown in this picture. They snow came in and sort of squashed the plastic, but nevertheless, our plants underneath survived. And ever since this experiment, we've come to grow year round using such techniques as these low tunnels. And we offer you 3 steps in this blog and video as to how you could do the same. So the first is to really have a change in mentality and to believe that you can extend your harvest season into the winter. We at first didn't think so, but we were willing to try and experiment and see how far we could go with low tunnels and growing underneath some sort of protection. And that leads us to our second step, which is to protect your crops using different techniques available to you and that are suitable for your specific growing situation. And the third is to know what to grow in each season. So let's dive right in. We learned a lot from looking at how French market gardeners tried to grow year round despite the cold and despite the lack of means to build a greenhouse, for instance, and have specific heating for their garden crops. So this is a historic market garden in Amiens, France, where market gardeners still use these plots today to grow their food for the French markets. And in this, they relied heavily on manure and techniques that were revived by a gentleman named Elliot Coleman, who was the author of several books, a lot of them having to do with growing a year-round garden. And so he talks about harvesting in the winter and the Winter Harvest Handbook for season harvests. And one of this even has a recipe book to go alongside the gardening part of it. And it's really a great insight into he revived this technique of growing food in high tunnels and covering them underneath and growing inside the high tunnels. He would put low tunnels. So in places such as Maine, where Elliot Coleman is from, he was able to still produce a lot of food for his markets with these techniques. So it definitely invite you to check that out. Invite you to check out this book by Nikki Jabor, who does it in a garden style, like not a market gardener, but just like from your backyard, growing under cover. And then a little bit of, we have a little bit of direction and how you yourself could build a low tunnel using these very affordable materials. Now, low tunnels don't work everywhere. We have here ribbing that's made out of aluminum electrical conduit, and then we have covers that are thicker the colder it gets. And despite the thickness and cover in Minnesota, this was not enough. And so you would rely on these techniques by these higher latitude growers, Elliot Coleman and Nikki Jabor, for those for climates that are higher than Minnesota, that have these very extreme cold winters. And those, of course, include later on, as we shall see, greenhouses. But before that, if you are zone 7 or higher, zone 8, you can get away with growing a lot in something called a cold frame or a cloche, which is protection with glass for specific plants. And of course, if you live in a farm, you could go ahead and build something as big as this, which is called a high tunnel. Now, there are government incentives to pay for most of your high tunnel, if not the whole price, the whole amount of it. You would just click on this link for the NRCS Equip grant. But for the rest of us who are in the suburbs, here are some curated options from places that are beautiful and smaller space, and they sell you the kits that you have to install in your garden, and you would just have to create the foundation And I say just, but I'm sure this is a big project in and of itself that you need a lot of planning for. And here's some of those options here. And then this particular company I really like because they meld permaculture with architecture and engineering, and they always have the best advice on where to situate your garden, your greenhouse, and make it so that it's a very efficient. And they use something called the climate battery. So harnessing the sun, putting it in the right place, creating a thermal mass to capture the heat passively are all hallmarks of this particular company, Ecosystems Design. So finally, we come to the third step, and that is knowing what to grow in each season. So we've put together a primer here for you to get yourself familiar if you aren't yet. And if you aren't, don't beat yourself up about it. It's really hard to become familiar with the seasons when you walk into the grocery store and everything is available all year round, which is not the truth. It's not all we can grow. And so we can grow all year round. You can't grow perhaps everything you want all year round, but you can grow key things that are meant for that season. And knowing and growing with the season is a different kind of knowledge. It's like partnering with nature instead of forcing her hand. Um, so here are some options that are still germinating for me and are growing in my greenhouse in the middle of winter: kale, lettuce, mosh, miner's lettuce, collards, Brussels sprouts, tatsoi, and spinach. Now, varieties are very important, so definitely research the varieties that are right for you in your climate. Winter legumes and cover crops. We talk a little bit about that here, but in suburban, urban settings, you can use some of your crops can double as soil fertility options. So, for instance, fava beans, which are legumes, can also help feed the soil. As you will see here, they fix nitrogen for the plants around them in the soil. And then root crops, it's always fun to discover that you have this forgotten root crop in the middle of winter. And if on a day that it's warm and you can wiggle it out there, you can still be harvesting carrots under the snow. Onions and garlic are biennials, so they are going to be harvested a little bit later in the spring, but they grow through the spring and the summer. A few cold tolerant herbs to consider are the following: cilantro, parsley, thyme, lemon balm, comfrey, oregano, rosemary, and sage. And for us in Zone 7, they are still producing for us in the ground and basically perennializing. So this might be your own situation. You'll never know unless you grow them. So try out more seeds this year and see what herbs you can grow through the winter. I do a little bit. I've spoken a little bit about, written a little bit about the summer crops, just to get our minds thinking ahead. Depending on when you watch this video, 3 months. We're always thinking 3 months ahead, and it might be time for you to start the summer family type crops. We don't want to start them too early because they will die inside without having a place outside in which to flourish. So you want to time these plants. And if you are wondering when to time them, we've got an app for you. Click on here to learn more about sage, plug in your zip code and the crops that you desire to grow, and it will spit out the perfect times for you to seed start, transplant, and sow them, as well as help you design a permaculture garden of your dreams. With that, I wish you happy growing this year, and let me know what you intend to grow